The entire prison went silent the second the steel door finally opened. 4 years, every inmate feared one man. Guards never spoke his name above a whisper. New prisoners were warned about him before they were even shown their own cells. Some said he had eyes that could see through lies. Others believed he had ordered terrible crimes without ever leaving his room. No one had stepped inside his cell in almost 8 years. Then, on one cold morning, the prison warden gave a single order. "Open his cell." The heavy lock clicked. The giant metal door slowly moved. Every guard tightened their grip. Every camera pointed toward the darkroom. No one expected to see what was waiting inside. One guard looked into the darkness. His face turned white. He stumbled backward without saying a word. Another guard rushed forward. Then he froze too. Whatever was inside that cell was so shocking that the toughest officers in the prison forgot how to move. The warden took one slow step closer. Then his eyes grew wide. "What is this?" he whispered. The answer would change everything the prison believed about the most feared prisoner who had ever lived. But to understand why that cell stayed locked for so many years, we have to go back to the day the prisoner first arrived. His name was Ethan Cross. Before prison, Ethan had been one of the smartest men investigators had ever chased. Police believed he had planned several major robberies across different states. He almost never left fingerprints. He rarely appeared on cameras. He always seemed to know what the police would do before they did. People started calling him the Ghost. After a long investigation, officers finally caught him during a traffic stop outside a small town in Colorado. There was no dramatic chase. No gunfire. Ethan simply smiled as the handcuffs clicked around his wrists. One detective asked him why he looked so calm. Ethan answered with only one sentence. "You think this is the end." Those words stayed with the detective for years. When Ethan arrived at Black Ridge Federal Prison, everyone expected him to act like other dangerous inmates. He did not. He never shouted. He never started fights. He never begged for favors. Instead, he watched. He noticed every guard, every camera, every locked door, every schedule. It was as if he was putting together pieces of a giant puzzle. The older inmates noticed something strange. Whenever Ethan looked at someone for more than a few seconds, that person became nervous. Soon, stories began spreading through the prison. One inmate claimed Ethan knew secrets that nobody had ever told him. Another swore Ethan predicted a surprise cell search before the alarms even sounded. A guard quietly admitted that Ethan once guessed the exact day another officer would retire. No one knew how. The rumors grew bigger every week. Some inmates refused to walk past his cell. Others left food outside his door because they believed making him angry would bring bad luck. Even officers started avoiding eye contact. The prison felt different after Ethan arrived. Quieter. Tenser. Like everyone was waiting for something terrible to happen. Months passed. Then one evening, the lights suddenly went out across the entire prison. Emergency alarms echoed through every hallway. Backup generators failed. Every electronic lock stopped working for almost 30 seconds. The darkness filled every corner of Black Ridge. Inmates shouted. Guards ran through the halls with flashlights. When the lights finally returned, something impossible had happened. Every prisoner was still locked inside their cells. Except one. Ethan Cross was standing alone in the middle of cell block C. He wasn't running. He wasn't holding a weapon. He was simply standing there with a calm smile, as if he had been expecting the blackout all along. Dozens of guards surrounded him within seconds. No one could explain how he had left his locked cell. The cameras had gone dark. The electronic records were erased. Even stranger. When officers checked Ethan's cell, they found the locked door had never been opened. The prison investigators stared at the reports in complete disbelief. And then one terrified guard slowly pointed toward the back wall of Ethan's cell. There wasn't a crack there yesterday. Everyone turned to look. Hidden behind the prison bed, a thin line had appeared across the concrete wall, as if something on the other side was trying to get out. Every guard in the room stared at the thin line running across the concrete wall. For a few seconds, no one spoke. The crack was small, but it looked fresh. Tiny pieces of gray dust rested on the floor below it. One officer carefully touched the wall with his flashlight. "It feels hollow," he whispered. The room became even quieter. That was impossible. The prison had been built with some of the strongest concrete in the country. Every wall had been checked many times over the years. Nothing should have been hidden behind it. The warden ordered everyone to step back. A maintenance crew arrived with special tools. Slowly, they chipped away at the cracked section while armed officers stood nearby. Ethan Cross watched from another cell. His face showed no fear, only a quiet smile. After several minutes, one worker suddenly stopped swinging his hammer. "I found something." The guards leaned closer. Behind the concrete was not another wall. It was empty space. The opening was only large enough for someone to shine a flashlight inside, but it revealed a narrow passage that disappeared into complete darkness. No blueprints showed a tunnel beneath cell block C. The prison records were checked again and again. Nothing. It was as if the passage had never existed. The warden immediately ordered the opening sealed with thick steel plates until investigators could arrive. No one was allowed to speak about what they had found. But prisons are full of rumors. By the next morning, every inmate knew about the hidden passage. Some believed it had been built by prisoners many years ago. Others claimed it had been there since the prison was first constructed. A few whispered something even stranger. They believed Ethan had known about it before anyone else. Days passed. Federal investigators questioned Ethan for hours. "Did you dig the tunnel?" one investigator asked. "No." "Did someone help you?" "No." "Then how did you leave your locked cell?" Ethan leaned back in his chair. "You keep asking the wrong question." The investigator frowned. "What is the right question?" Ethan looked directly into his eyes. "You should ask why someone wanted me outside that cell." The room fell silent. The investigators exchanged nervous looks. Was Ethan playing another mind game? Or did he know something they didn't? Life inside Black Ridge slowly returned to normal. At least, that was what everyone hoped. The lights stayed on. The doors worked. Meals were served on time. But something had changed. More guards requested transfers. Several officers refused to work the night shift near cell block C. Even experienced inmates stayed away from Ethan's cell whenever they could. One evening, Officer Daniel Brooks was assigned to watch Ethan alone. Daniel had worked in prisons for almost 20 years. He believed facts, not ghost stories. As he walked past the cell, Ethan quietly spoke. "You have a daughter." Daniel stopped. That wasn't surprising. Many guards had families. Then Ethan continued. "She forgot her blue backpack at school today." Daniel slowly turned around. His heart started beating faster. His daughter did have a blue backpack. But there was no way Ethan could know she had forgotten it. Daniel rushed home after his shift. His wife opened the door before he could even ask. "You'll never believe what happened," she said. "Our daughter left her backpack at school today." Daniel felt a chill run through his body. The next morning, he reported everything to the warden. The story spread through the prison in hours. Now even the officers who laughed at the rumors stopped smiling. Ethan never explained how he knew. He simply sat quietly inside his cell, reading old books from the prison library. Then another strange event happened. A new inmate named Tyler Mason arrived at Black Ridge. Tyler was loud, angry, and eager to prove he feared no one. The older inmates warned him, "Stay away from Ethan Cross." Tyler laughed. "He's just another prisoner." That afternoon, Tyler walked straight to Ethan's cell. He banged on the bars. "So you're the famous ghost?" Ethan slowly looked up from his book. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then he quietly spoke. "You shouldn't be here tomorrow." The hallway became silent. Tyler burst into laughter. "You trying to scare me?" Ethan closed his book. "I wasn't trying." Tyler walked away, still laughing. The next morning, every prisoner woke to blaring alarms. Guards rushed toward the East Recreation Yard. An accident had happened during an early maintenance job. Tyler had been seriously injured when part of an old concrete walkway suddenly collapsed beneath him. He survived, but he was immediately transferred to a prison hospital. The story spread faster than any rumor before it. Now the inmates were convinced. If Ethan Cross said something was going to happen, it happened. Fear grew inside Black Ridge like a shadow that reached every hallway. Weeks later, the prison received an unexpected visitor. She introduced herself as Sarah Bennett, an investigator from Washington. She carried a thick folder marked with Ethan Cross's name. The warden welcomed her into his office. "I've reviewed every report you've sent," Sarah said. "I don't believe in curses or magic. But something doesn't fit." She placed several old prison maps on the desk. One map caught the warden's attention immediately. It showed a section beneath cell block C that had been covered with black ink decades earlier, almost as if someone had tried to erase it from history. Sarah looked at the warden. "I think your prison was built on top of something no one was ever supposed to find." Before either of them could say another word, every light inside Black Ridge suddenly went out again. This time, the backup generators failed instantly. The prison disappeared into complete darkness. Then, from somewhere deep below cell block C, a loud metallic bang echoed through the underground passage. It sounded exactly like another heavy prison door had just been opened. The loud metal bang echoed through Black Ridge Prison. Every officer froze. The emergency lights should have turned on within seconds. They did not. The prison remained covered in darkness. Only the sound of nervous breathing and distant footsteps filled the halls. "Everyone stay where you are," the warden shouted. Flashlights switched on one by one. Their narrow beams cut through the darkness, but they only made the shadows seem larger. Another sound came from beneath cell block C. Clang, clang, clang. It was slow, steady, like someone was climbing a long metal staircase. Officer Daniel Brooks swallowed hard. "Did you hear that?" No one answered. They had all heard it. The warden quickly ordered a full lockdown. Every inmate was told to stay inside their cells. Guards hurried through the prison, checking each block one at a time. When they reached Ethan Cross's cell, he was sitting on his bed. He looked completely calm, almost as if he had been expecting the blackout. The warden stepped closer. "What do you know about that tunnel?" Ethan looked at him without blinking. "You sealed one door." He paused. "But you never looked for the second one." The warden's heart sank. "What second door?" Ethan simply looked toward the floor. No one spoke for several seconds. The lights suddenly came back. The prison buzzed to life again. Cameras restarted. Electronic doors locked into place. Everything looked normal. Except one thing. The security camera outside Ethan's cell had recorded nothing during the blackout. Instead of darkness, the screen showed the same empty hallway repeating over and over again, as if time itself had become stuck. The prison's computer experts could not explain it. Sarah Bennett watched the strange recording again and again. "This isn't just a broken camera," she said. "Someone erased what really happened." "But who?" asked the warden. No one had an answer. Later that afternoon, Sarah requested permission to inspect the hidden passage behind Ethan's cell. A small team entered wearing helmets, flashlights, and breathing masks. The air inside smelled old and damp. Dust covered every surface. The narrow passage stretched deep beneath the prison. No footprints. No fresh tools. Nothing. After nearly 20 minutes of walking, they reached a heavy steel door covered with rust. There was no handle. Only a faded warning sign. Most of the words had disappeared with time. Only 3 could still be read. "Do not open." Sarah brushed away more dust. Below the warning was an old government seal. The date was almost impossible to read. She looked at the others. "This door has been hidden for decades." One officer pointed his flashlight at the floor. "There are footprints." Everyone looked down. Fresh footprints. They had not been made by the investigation team. Someone had walked through the dust very recently. The tracks stopped directly in front of the old steel door. Then they disappeared. Not turned around. Not continued forward. Simply disappeared. A cold silence filled the tunnel. The officers searched every inch of the walls. There were no secret exits. No hidden ladders. Nothing. Sarah took several photographs before leading everyone back to the surface. That evening, she searched through old government records. Most files about Black Ridge had been destroyed in a fire years earlier. But one damaged folder survived. Inside was a faded newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Construction workers report hidden chambers beneath new federal prison." The article ended suddenly. Several lines had been cut away with scissors. Someone had removed part of the story. Sarah frowned. Who would erase a newspaper? She kept searching until she found one final page. It listed the names of 12 construction workers. 11 had finished the project. One had disappeared before the prison officially opened. His name was Michael Turner. No body had ever been found. Sarah immediately asked for more records. There were none. It was as if Michael Turner had vanished from history. The next morning, she visited Ethan again. She placed the old newspaper on the table. "Do you know this name?" Ethan looked at the picture. For the first time since arriving at Black Ridge, his calm expression changed. Only for a second. But Sarah noticed. "You know him," she said. Ethan slowly nodded. "I've heard the name." "From who?" "My father." Sarah leaned forward. "What did he tell you?" Ethan's voice became very quiet. "He said there are prisons built to keep dangerous people inside." He paused. "And there are prisons built to keep dangerous secrets inside." Sarah felt a chill run down her back. Before she could ask another question, the prison intercom suddenly crackled to life. A frightened voice shouted across every speaker. "Officer down! Officer down! Cell Block C!" Guards sprinted toward the block. Sarah and the warden ran behind them. When they arrived, they found Officer Daniel Brooks sitting on the floor. He was awake but badly shaken. His flashlight lay beside him. "What happened?" the warden asked. Daniel pointed toward Ethan's cell with trembling hands. "I was checking the hallway." He struggled to catch his breath. "And I saw someone standing inside Ethan's cell." The warden looked through the bars. Ethan was sitting alone on his bed. Daniel shook his head. "No, there were 2 people in that cell." The hallway fell silent. "Who was the second person?" Sarah asked. Daniel stared at the floor. "I couldn't see the face." He swallowed hard. "But whoever it was, they were standing behind Ethan." At that exact moment, every officer heard a slow knocking sound. Knock, knock, knock. It wasn't coming from the cell. It was coming from inside the concrete wall behind it. Knock, knock, knock. The sound echoed through cell block C. Every guard turned toward the wall behind Ethan Cross's cell. No one moved. The knocking came again. Slow, even. Almost as if someone was asking to be let out. Officer Daniel Brooks took one careful step backward. "I know what I saw," he whispered. "There was someone standing behind Ethan." The warden looked at Ethan through the bars. Ethan remained seated on his bunk. His hands rested on his knees. His face showed no fear. He simply listened. The knocking suddenly stopped. The silence that followed felt even worse. The warden ordered everyone out of the block except the emergency response team. Within minutes, engineers, investigators, and security officers surrounded the cell. The steel plates covering the hidden passage were removed once again. As they entered the narrow tunnel, every flashlight beam searched the walls. There were no voices. No footsteps. Only the sound of dripping water far below the prison. Sarah Bennett walked in front. She reached the old steel door marked, "Do not open." Something was different. The thick layer of dust around the door had been disturbed again. Fresh footprints covered the floor. This time there were 2 different sets. One pair was large. The other was much smaller. The tracks ended in front of the steel door. Just like before. Sarah carefully examined the door. Then she noticed something that made her stop breathing for a moment. The rust around the edge had been scratched away. Very recently. As if someone had tried to pull the door open from the other side. She slowly placed her hand against the cold metal. It was vibrating. Very lightly. Everyone else felt it too. The vibration lasted only a few seconds before stopping. Officer Brooks looked pale. Something is back there. No one argued with him. The team returned to the surface. The warden immediately called federal officials and requested permission to force the old door open. Hours later, the answer came back. Permission denied. The order shocked everyone. The message was short. Do not open the sealed chamber. Continue normal prison operations. Nothing else. Sarah stared at the paper. Normal operations, she said. How can anything be normal after this? She began making phone calls to old government offices, retired prison workers, and local historians. Late that evening, an elderly man finally agreed to meet her. His name was Harold Jenkins. He had worked at Black Ridge as a young maintenance worker nearly 50 years earlier. Sarah showed him a photograph of the old steel door. Harold's hands began to shake. I hoped I'd never see that door again, he whispered. What is it? Sarah asked. Harold looked around the quiet diner before answering. When I started working at Black Ridge, the older workers warned us about the lower level. They said there was a part of the prison we were never allowed to enter. Why? They didn't tell us. They only said that years before I arrived, something happened during construction. After that, government trucks came in during the middle of the night. The workers who asked questions disappeared from the job. Were they fired? Harold slowly shook his head. No one ever saw them again. Sarah felt a chill. Did you ever go down there? Once. His voice became almost silent. I was sent to repair a leaking pipe. I took the wrong hallway and found that old steel door. There were soldiers standing guard. Not prison guards. Soldiers. What happened? They told me to leave immediately. The next day, my supervisor acted like the hallway had never existed. Sarah thanked Harold and hurried back to Black Ridge. When she arrived, the prison was on high alert. Every available guard had been called in. The reason became clear within seconds. Someone had entered the prison archives. Nothing valuable had been stolen. Only one file was missing. Ethan Cross's original intake file. The security cameras showed a person wearing a maintenance uniform entering the archive room. But the face was impossible to identify. The person kept their head down the entire time. Even stranger. No maintenance worker had been assigned to that area. The uniform did not belong to anyone currently employed at Black Ridge. Sarah rushed to Ethan's cell. She held up a copy of the missing file. Someone wants your records. Ethan looked at the empty folder. They're too late. What does that mean? My file never contained the truth. Sarah stared at him. What truth? Ethan looked directly into her eyes. I wasn't sent to Black Ridge because they were afraid I would escape. He paused. They sent me here because they were afraid someone would find me. Before Sarah could ask another question, a loud alarm blasted through the prison. Not the normal emergency alarm. This was one no one had ever heard before. A deep mechanical siren echoed through every hallway. Red warning lights flashed across the ceiling. The prison's oldest control panel suddenly came to life by itself. A message appeared on the dusty screen. Sealed chamber breached. Every officer in the control room stared in disbelief. No one opened that door, the warden said. An operator checked every security system. His face lost all color. The alert isn't saying someone opened the chamber. He slowly turned toward the warden. It's saying... Something just came out. The control room became completely silent. The words on the screen did not change. Sealed chamber breached. No one spoke. The warden grabbed the radio. Lock every cell. Nobody moves until we know what's happening. Steel doors slammed shut across Black Ridge Prison. Guards rushed into position. Sarah Bennett looked at the old control panel again. There has to be another explanation, she said. There has to. She, the warden, Officer Daniel Brooks, and a small emergency team hurried back to the hidden tunnel beneath Cell Block C. When they reached the old steel door, they stopped. It was standing open. Only a few inches. Cold air drifted through the narrow gap. The team carefully pushed the heavy door open. Their flashlights swept across the room inside. Everyone expected to find a person. Instead, they found something far stranger. It was a forgotten government archive. Metal shelves filled the room from floor to ceiling. Thousands of old boxes sat untouched under years of dust. Folders, blueprints, photographs, tape recordings. Every box carried the same label. Black Ridge Project. Sarah slowly opened the nearest file. Inside were construction plans that had never appeared in the official records. The hidden chamber had not been built to hold prisoners. It had been built to hide evidence. Decades earlier, during construction of the prison, investigators had uncovered proof that several powerful officials had accepted money from organized crime groups. Instead of making the evidence public while the case was still being investigated, everything had been sealed inside the chamber after legal disputes, security concerns, and changes in leadership. Over the years, the records were forgotten, and the hidden room became a legend. The missing construction worker, Michael Turner, had not disappeared because of monsters or ghosts. He had secretly copied important documents before leaving the job under government protection as a witness. To keep his family safe, his identity was changed, and the true story was hidden from the public. Sarah opened another box. There was a list of names. One name made Ethan Cross slowly close his eyes. His father. Officer Brooks looked at Ethan. "You knew?" Ethan nodded. "My father worked on the construction crew. Before he died, he told me there was something hidden beneath this prison." Sarah looked surprised. "So that's why you committed crimes to get sent here?" Ethan lowered his head. "No." Everyone waited. "I committed crimes because I made terrible choices. I deserve to be in prison." He took a slow breath. "But once I learned where I had been sent, I realized the truth about my father might still be here." The room remained quiet. "For years," Ethan continued, "I watched. I listened. I studied the prison. I searched for the hidden chamber whenever I legally could during work assignments and maintenance details. I never escaped my cell. I never broke through the wall." The warden frowned. "Then how did you end up outside your locked cell during the blackout?" Sarah searched another box. Inside she found an old maintenance report. She read it carefully. Then she looked up. "I think I know." The report described a serious electrical failure years before. During rare power failures, one electronic lock in cell block C could briefly release before the backup system reset. The defect had been repaired only after the first mysterious blackout, but by then the rumors had already spread. Ethan had simply stepped into the hallway. When the power returned, the faulty lock secured itself again before anyone noticed. The impossible escape had a simple explanation. Officer Brooks remembered seeing someone behind Ethan. Sarah opened one final folder. Inside was a schedule showing that an undercover federal investigator had secretly entered Black Ridge disguised as a maintenance worker on the night of the blackout to verify old records connected to the hidden archive. During the confusion, Officer Brooks had caught only a quick glimpse of the investigator before the person disappeared into another corridor. There had never been a ghost. Only fear, darkness, and unanswered questions. The strange camera recording was explained by damaged storage drives that failed during the electrical surge. The knocking inside the wall came from old water pipes expanding and contracting after emergency power restored heat to the sealed chamber. The sounds echoed through the hollow space, making them seem much closer than they really were. One mystery after another finally made sense. Weeks later, federal authorities carefully removed every box from the hidden archive. The evidence was reviewed, and several old corruption investigations were officially reopened. Historians called the discovery one of the most unusual findings ever made beneath an American prison. The sealed chamber was permanently documented so it could never be erased from history again. As for Ethan Cross, he remained in prison. He accepted responsibility for his crimes and continued serving his sentence. The stories that claimed he could predict the future slowly disappeared. People finally understood that fear had turned ordinary events into impossible legends. Before Sarah left Black Ridge for the last time, she visited Ethan one final time. "You could have let the mystery live forever," she said. Ethan gave a small smile. The truth lasts longer than fear. Sarah nodded. As she walked away, she looked back at the cell that had terrified an entire prison for years. The most frightening thing hidden behind that door had never been a monster. It had never been a ghost. It had never been the prisoner. It was the truth that everyone had been too afraid to uncover.